Hello, all. I thought I'd offer a few words on the appalling graffiti within Canterbury Cathedral. And it's very interesting, this, because it's really part of the chaos of collapse as I would see it. I did a video recently on how the Anglican Church is just falling apart. They have a female leader now, which is very much anti the tradition, the Christian tradition. But also, we see this again as just another iteration of that collapse. Really, what we're seeing in traditionalist terms is the profane start to dominate over the sacred. And this has happened for a while. This is just another outward reflection of that inner betrayal of the sacred order. But as always with these things, there is a silver lining. In the chaos, we always have an opportunity for deeper realization, which I think is on display here. If we can't make that realization, it is unfortunately curtains, I think, for the Anglican tradition, but even deeper than that, probably even our own spiritual anchors in Britain and Europe, and we will be taken over by a different tradition. That's why many people fear Islam. It's very strong, and if you betray your own mythology, which is essentially your own heart, your own identity, something new will come in. But as I say, we do have an opportunity at this time to understand in a much deeper context what's really going on here. The first thing to say is, why has this bothered so many people? You could have the cliche of, it's just a slop story, or it's one of these things that's going to get the sort of uptight conservative dads in a spin. But I don't think that would be necessarily fair, because this seems to have bothered people across the board. What I mean by that is, how many people who this bothers have actually gone to church, in the past year, who even believe, if you will. And this again tells us something very important, that people are bothered by this for a reason perhaps that we haven't truly worked through yet, and there's a lot of gold in there if we're willing to look into it. I mean, first of all, I think we could see it bothers people for socio-cultural reasons rather than spiritual ones. I mean, for instance, the symbols of graffiti themselves are really that which is created to desecrate the social space, the shared social space. And in a sense, especially in English history, there was an idea of the magic of the neat social space, which very much speaks into this idea of English individualism, but as part of a collective, which you don't hear so much about. But of course, you get this across the board throughout English history. It's that sort of deeper dimension of social harmony where you respect social space. And that's because we all share it and nobody wants to come and dominate it, because there's something deeply crude about painting your own individualism over what is for the whole. And of course, we've seen that throughout time. You get it in the pretty gardens, the nice videos we see of England back in the day where you can see it looking organised and healthy. But it's not just the beauty spots of England or the nice gardens in a city or town. It's also, you see it in the Cockney washerwoman in the East End cleaning her step, in some council tenement, or the Northern lady doing the same, in Lancashire. There's that respect for social space and doing your bit to keep it somewhat neat and by extension all the more livable, and not, if you like, overtaking the social space, so you're making it yours, which is obviously a real poison of modernism, and that's what graffiti really is. It's a rebellion against the social space. It's an FU to the social order. And again, I would say a betrayal, if you like, of what England was in many ways. But of course, we can understand why the Anglican Church, and I'm sure many of the Guardianistas think this is absolutely great, because, they're very much bought into leftist critical theory. Their ideas would be something like, what we're doing here is challenging, traditional hierarchies. As if there are any of those anymore. And, this is the inclusion of the oppressed and marginalised. And of course, what they ignore in their also wonderful leftist ideology is A, as I say, the traditional hierarchies have fallen apart. That's why this happens. But B, these graffiti types, they marginalise themselves. There's a reason why they do it at night, why it's secret. And it reminds me of the multicultural London English accent, the one that what you see in blood, how's it going like? When they talk like that, it's horrible. But I'm old enough to know when that came in, people didn't always talk like that. It became a way of distinguishing yourself from the mainstream. And like all things, they thought they were cool and different, and I'm edgy, lad, I'm saying, lad. It's all that, oh, you don't know, this is how we talk now, But the point is, they purposefully wanted to marginalise themselves. It wasn't mainstream society marginalising them. They wanted to do it themselves, to look cool, to be different, to be with the black folks, the new arrivals and all that sort of stuff, to speak from a different cultural centre. And this is why, if you do welcome in graffiti, or you try and get, people in authoritative positions talking like that, like I'm saying, you don't welcome these people in and create a better world. You desecrate the sacred order on our side, and the people who engage in these accents or do graffiti will just find another way, to rebel, to marginalise themselves. So all you've really done by trying to do your wonderful lefty thing of, taking apart the tradition, it's just ruined the tradition, while these people you're trying to welcome in, who have apparently been marginalised, will just go and find something else. So the whole thing is just a complete pointless waste of time. Well, not necessarily pointless, as we'll get to. But the final point to make is, again, this is with regard to the Anglican Church itself, quite clearly with a female Archbishop of Canterbury, they're spiritually confused anyway. But it's just more evidence of their deep, deep spiritual confusion. Their idea, of course, is, typical softy Christianity, which again reflects liberalism in the culture. We have to be nice and welcoming and tolerant to different expressions. Of course, what they're not realising is when they do this in such ugly and appalling ways, is while they're trying to welcome all these people who wouldn't give two shits about them, they're actively finding new ways every single day to say fuck you to the loyal and spiritually hungry flock. The people in England and abroad who follow the Anglican tradition, who are desperate for spiritual leadership, they are just sick of being spat in the face, and it's just going to put people off again. And I'm sure, the softly types, Doolally Moolally, as she's already being called, at the head of the Anglican Church, will, say, oh yeah, but, Jesus welcomed the sinners. Yeah, he did. But the point was, Jesus didn't go to the sinners and say, continue your prostitution. That's not the point. Jesus went to the sinners to say, you can be saved. You're still loved no matter how far you've gone, no matter how bad things have got. There is still that spark inside you, and all of the hell that you've fallen into can be worked through and overcome through me. He was there to heal them and guide them back to the right way, not to say come and display your degeneracy all over the place, not to bring the profane into the sacred. It's the other way around. The sacred was going into the profane. But of course, again, we're in this era of modernism where everything is upside down. But I thought we could have a little exercise here, a little rebellion, if you will, against the mode of modernity. And that's, in many senses, we see these things in the media, and the media kind of wants you to be mad when you see these images and click on it and write your angry comment and all that sort of stuff. But how about we try and actually galvanise some energy from this? So, take a look at these images, ugly images as they are. And instead of going to the mind and thinking, what does the mind say? Because the mind's just going to rage. Just feel in the body. What does this do to your body when you look at these images? Where does it spark? What centres does it spark? When I look at this imagery, personally, what it does for me, where I feel it, when I really look at it, I feel a real sting in my sort of solar plexus area. That's the centre of your torso where your nerve endings meet, or some of them end. So again, it's a high area of electricity in the body, and I feel a real sting there because I feel there's something holy almost that's being betrayed and desecrated. So it's right in a solar plexus. Another thing, I feel an almost anger in the gut, a frustration. And we should always be aware of that, because if you take too much anger in your guts, you'll find you get in all sorts of depressive moods. So bringing consciousness to that is very important in my view. But anyway, you can feel that centre in the gut, because the gut is known as the second brain, the emotional centre. And also, I think most obviously, you can feel something, or I can at least feel something in the heart. What I mean is a sort of heartache, a heart-wrenching quality. And that's probably from the sense of betrayal, And what does this tell us? I mean, look, in complete truth, I'm not a down-the-line Anglican. I love the Anglican churches. There's elements of the Anglican tradition I love, the hymns, evensong and so on. The English village church that you can wander into where they leave the door open and meditate on your own for hours sometimes. No one will come in. It's lovely. But despite not being an Anglican and very concerned about the Anglican tradition, I care. And I dare say some of you care as well. And you think, well, why do we care so much? It makes sense if you're like a priest or you go to your Anglican church every week loyally. But how many of us really do that? I dare say most of us don't. Yet there's still something about this that really bothers us. And I think that is very, very important. Because, again, it's kind of a sign that the new atheist revolution that happened was never going to truly be able to gut out the felt sense of connection we have with our tradition. It was very strong, of course, in its scientific material arguments. But outside of that, when it came to metaphysics, very poor. And modern man struggles with metaphysics. I'm not going to get into that now. But it can be awakened within you. And when we look into the body and find where are we bothered, it gives us answers as to what we've lost, but what still breathes deep down within us. There's something sacred that's been touched. And you don't have to believe in talking snakes or anything like that. You don't even have to think that the Bible is absolutely great or whatever. It's up to you. But we can see that there's a sense that something sacred has been desecrated here. It reminds me of this show, Peep Show. You may know it. They have this character who's a bit of a silly degenerate. And he needs a pee one day and goes on a church. And he has this line where he says, like, Dawkins, you talk the talk, but I'm walking the walk. And of course, the joke is that it's a terrible thing to do, to pee on a church. But why? If you really follow Dawkins to the letter, why would it matter? But somehow it does. Again, we're talking to something sacred still. And that would speak, I would believe, to the idea that the church is our collective heart in many senses. Or you could just say the tradition if you don't like the word church. It's our collective shared heart. And it's very clear at the moment that our heart is deeply, gravely wounded. But that we can tell that this is sacred, that we can tell that something's gone on wrong here is a sign, to my mind, that England still lives, that the sacred is still there within us in this dormant state. And again, we could say, as I say, you don't have to believe in talking snakes or anything like that. What I'm speaking to here is there is something of a truth which is deeper than modernity, which is bothered when you have these stabs from the modern world. And I can't help but think about this as symbolised in something like Christ on the cross and what that's talking to. It's highly ironic, all of this, because you think, well, what is the message of Christ on the cross? Because there's many messages, but I think one of them is that the world, material, can be shattered. Life can be brutal, horrifyingly bad at times. And that's what is represented in Christ's physical formation. He's tortured, he's beaten up, he's brutalized, he's spat on, he's mocked. The most disgusting and appalling things are done to him. And then he's nailed to a cross and left to die. Just utter savagery. And it's very powerful that image is at the centre of Western culture. Because what does it mean? How can something so horrible and awful be at the centre of Western culture? Well, the message is that no matter the horror of the world, there is a spirit that overcomes. And I think this is what we can witness in our own small way here. And again, it's this something like, you can desecrate the material. You can make it look ugly. You can mock people. You can destroy everything. But you can't destroy the spirit, which is where the true heart of the tradition, the true heart of people really lives. And again, we're seeing this on the church-wide level. The church is being humiliated, battered, debased, but only in its exoteric form. And that means its outer form. Because what we're really rediscovering, I think, at this stage of chaos in late modernity is the real spirit within, the implicit spirit, that which cannot be destroyed, is starting to awaken. Not because of you have to believe any things which are magical, not because you feel that you've got to just read the Bible in this literal way, but because we feel something sacred is being destroyed. Yes, in the form of the church, but in our culture, in our nation, in our continent, in Christendom, in Europe, we all feel it. And it's beyond the rational. It goes deeper than that which can be simply explained through the, tools of rationalism of modernity. It's something which speaks to the heart and the soul and the shared spirit. And to my mind, this is why we have a silver lining here. When darkness attacks, which it always will, we have a choice. We can get angry and lost and just more maddened and stuck in the modern world, or we can galvanize towards that deeper realization that there is something awakening within us. We are moving to a new era. So again, we do this by understanding, why does this hurt? What part of me hurts? Why does it hurt other people? Because we can see there's something that we share here: history, ancestry, tradition, order, social harmony, justice, identity. And as I say, the realization that there's something sacred in this life. In the words of Samwise Gamgee, that there's some good in this life and it's worth fighting for, Mr. Frodo. And this is the point that I'm making here. We're entering the death throes of modernity and its way, and it's destroying everything around it. But with that comes the opportunity for a new age. And to my mind, this new tradition that's awakening, yes, it will have similarities to the old. It will have a line to the old. But it is going to be new. It's going to be understanding things in a new way, with a new respect, a new understanding of what the sacred truly is. And this is, when we see things like this, which are just appalling, we can always be stilled by the realization that this is just a sign of one age ending and a new one beginning. And that lives within us. That beginning starts within us. As always, these are my thoughts. Do let me know what you think down below. If you are interested in the spiritual and personal transformation side of things, do join the sister channel, The Sacred Way, in the description. And do join the Substack as well if you want to do any of the courses I offer and you'd like to join the exclusive group calls and get exclusive content, or just support me. Thank you very much as always for listening. Do subscribe to the channel if you're new, and enjoy the rest of your day, friends.